Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, happy NBA Day. And welcome to this thing we like to call the sweat. Yes, Jessie Coffield is sick, but she did manage to come in for a few hours, which means the rest of us in this office will be sick momentarily. I'm Emerson, Lotzia, and what we have for you today is a lineup unlike any other. We're going to be doing Tears of Joy on the ice. We got showdown mode for the NLCS tonight, bold predictions from our baseball or our basketball bros, rather. Yeah, we're going to have Steve here as well. Mr. Put Up Your Bukes. My best advice to you is to listen to the analyst people. And football is where we get this party started. Let's say hello to DK Live's Reed Fowler, Adam Mancuda of Phantom Sports, and the Action Network's Ryan Stone Cold Collinsworth. It's Waiver Wire Tuesday, guys, and I'm telling you right now, Joe Flacco appears to be available. Could be in line for a big game here against the Saints defense. If he is available, Reed, is he the guy you're going for at quarterback?
I'm actually going Baker Mayfield. He's probably 42 to 45% owned in most leagues. But if you look at his matchups, and you'll hear this quite often if you're looking at other waiver wire articles, his matchups for the next 4 weeks are pretty juicy. I mean, you get Atlanta, right? You get Pittsburgh, you get Kansas City, you get all of these top defenses for opposing quarterbacks. And I know Baker Mayfield is a little hurt. He's a little gimpy with the ankle, but don't get fooled. He's ready to play. All the reports are saying he is able to play this week, and he's averaging about 38 attempts. The one thing that does scare you about Baker, though, is his receivers aren't necessarily catching the ball that often, but this guy is in line for a big game. He's got a great matchup, so I'd go Baker over Flacco for this week, and then if you need him for the next few weeks, he's in prime matchups.
Ryan, how do you feel about Baker here in this situation? Or would you prefer Flacco over him? Or maybe neither one?
Yeah, let's go neither.
Okay, so who do you like?
Yeah, no, Baker is a good option here for all the reasons that Reed mentioned, but I'm just scared off by last week in particular, and the ankle injury combined with how his receivers performed makes me just kind of a little on edge. The guy that I'm targeting is Mitchell Trubisky of the Bears. You know, he's had 2 back-to-back 300-plus yard passing games, 3+ passing touchdowns, and he's rushed for 53 and 47 yards respectively in those 2 games. You know, a lot of people across the industry pegged him as one of the breakout stars for the season, and the last 2 games he's starting to show it. He's statistically kind of 2018's version of like 2015 Blake Bortles. You know, he's got sneaky rushing upside and decent passing upside in the correct matchup. And this coming week, he gets the Patriots, who are allowing the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So give me Trubisky.
Yeah, how about that 6-touchdown game a few weeks ago? Can't argue with that. All right. Who do you like? Who's the best option right now on the waiver wire here, Mr. Mancuda?
Yeah, it's funny. I hate to go against someone with the nickname Stone Cold, and as much as I like Mitch Trubisky, like you got to remember in that comparison to Bortles, I feel bad because I hope he doesn't turn into Blake Bortles circa 2018, how bad he is now. But I'm with Reed on this one, and it's Baker Mayfield, and here's the reason why. He stated those 4 matchups that he has coming up. Those are 4 of the 5 top performing defenses, worst performing defenses against quarterbacks. So to me, not only that, when you look at the offenses that those teams have, Pittsburgh, Tampa, Kansas City, and Atlanta, they all can score points. So what that means to me is it's going to be a shootout on both sides of the ball. Baker's going to have to keep up. And if he's throwing the ball 38 times a game, like Reed said, sooner or later, these guys are going to learn how to catch the ball. He does have a great receiver in Landry, and Njoku's getting a ton of targets, as I'll mention a little bit later. And to me, someone's going to step up there as another wide receiver weapon. So to me, it's Baker. I think his price is going to be relatively cheap this week, again, especially coming off that ankle injury for Cleveland. And I would take him certainly going forward the next 4 weeks and see how that pans out.
Adam, haven't we been saying this for a few weeks, though, and hasn't really amounted to much?
Yeah, but you know what? I think this is the test for Baker, right? I think, he played against the Chargers, who couldn't be stopped last week. He was playing from behind, got a little banged up. I think let's see how the next couple weeks go. If he could get through the next couple weeks and then he's still struggling, then it's something to take a look at. But if he can't do well, especially against a team like, Tampa Bay or Kansas City in the next couple weeks, or even Pittsburgh, that spells trouble for Cleveland until they get more talent around him.
All right, well, for all of you at home watching, we appreciate you. And if you need some wide receiver help, maybe Albert Wilson is your guy after a monster game for the Dolphins. Adam, is he the best wide receiver waiver wire option right now?
I disagree. I think that Wilson's really a boomer bust guy. He was never that productive in Kansas City. And for me, the guy is Tyrell Williams. We saw what he did last week in the game against Cleveland, had a couple of those long touchdowns. He's just a very explosive receiver. The defense is obviously key on Melvin Gordon, who I know Reed loves in every week in every format. But Keenan Allen also gets a lot of the attention. So what does that do? That frees up Tyrell Williams. You know that Rivers loves to go deep, loves to go vertical. So to me, Tyrell Williams is a guy who's probably on the waiver wire in most leagues, in most formats. So I would look to add him as a solid like wide receiver 3 type play and leave Wilson for someone else that's not really paying attention.
How much should people be paying attention, though, to Albert Wilson, Reed?
I mean, not so much. I mean, like Jakeem Grant is another guy on that team that has sort of that same dynamic where he's boomer bust. I mean, Kenny Stills, I think we were talking about it earlier, is droppable in most leagues. And so you look at that game, really 2 big chunk plays that got him all of that production. Tyrell Williams is another guy who really is boomer bust. I think we've seen him over the years have some production, especially when Keenan Allen goes out. But Mike Williams is still there. A guy I'm looking at is Marquise Goodwin. I mean, we saw it last night. Most people dropped this guy. He couldn't get healthy, had hamstring and I believe knee issues the first 5 weeks, and then Garoppolo goes down. This is a guy that we were talking about preseason as being one of the top performers or a 2018 breakout season for this guy. He's a former track star. I think you saw in his TD celebrations last night. You saw 5 targets. Look at that production on those targets, or excuse me, 5 receptions. He has seen double-digit targets from C.J. Beathard in the past, and that's what he needs, right? He needs probably that 7 to 8 target type game to have production. But if you look at San Francisco too, their defense can't stop anyone. Really, they should have won that game, and they played good defense, and they got 33 put up on them. So the defense, the bad defense, coupled with what they have to do in that passing game, Marquise Goodwin, if people dropped him earlier in the season, go pick him up. He's about 40 to 45% owned.
Yeah, and C.J. Beathard looking like a pretty decent quarterback on Monday night. Great point, Reed. Hey, Ryan, Ryan, who should people be peeping out there on the wide receiver waiver wire?
So everybody that's been discussed so far, Albert Wilson, Tyrell Williams, Marquise Goodwin, they're all good options, but they're also upside options. You have to be able to stomach some kind of risk to roster those guys. So I'm going to give you 2 higher floor options. The first one is Taylor Gabriel for Chicago, kind of running it back to the Bears with my Trubisky take. Gabriel, the last 2 games, while Trubisky's been popping off, has had 100 yards each of those games. Meanwhile, Allen Robinson in those 2 games, the resident number 1 receiver, has only had 7 total receptions for 87 total yards. That's in 2 games. Now, I'm not saying A-Rob is fading altogether, but maybe Gabriel and Robinson are starting to have a more equal share of targets, and that's kind of what we're seeing in terms of the metrics. And then Taylor Gabriel is tied for the team lead in opportunities inside of the 10-yard line. So while Robinson has been the one with touchdowns the last 2 weeks, I think those touchdowns are probably coming down the line for Gabriel. And then on top of Gabriel, I think Jermaine Kearse also deserves a little bit of love following Enunwa's injury to his ankle. He's set to miss the next 3 or 4 weeks effectively as of this morning. So Kearse stepping into that slot role in New York could get a pretty significant volume share of targets moving forward.
Stone cold, underselling and over-delivering. That's why we like you. That's why you're part of this program, young man. A couple big names at running back, though, are on by this week, gentlemen. James Conner, Marshawn Lynch. Who's your guy if you need a dude to tote the rock? Go ahead, Ryan.
Give me Marlon Mack for the Colts for a couple reasons. Short term, I like the matchup against the Bills this week. The Bills' strength is in their secondary with Tre'Davious White, and then we just got news this morning that Josh Allen is doubtful with his elbow injury. So if they have Peterman behind center, I have literally zero faith in that offense whatsoever. And if that's the case, that could lead to a run script for Indy. They are desperate to establish the run this season. They have been unable to so far. Mack 89 yards last week, in a potentially nice spot this week. And then with Nyheim Hines as the only guy challenging for carries, I live here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I've got season tickets to NC State football.
Yeah,
I saw him for 4 years. Hines is more of a Duke Johnson, Charkandrick West type of guy, a straight line speed as opposed to agile out in the flat. So he's not the guy you necessarily want at your tailback.
Hey, Reed, we were talking a little bit off camera before the show. I mean, you were kind of high on Marlon Mack, were you?
Yeah, I like him. I think when you look at that, what you saw, right, highly efficient. I believe only 12 to 14 carries, and he got you 87 yards. And that's someone that you would think, especially if he's a dual threat. Nyheim Hines is someone that you still need to consider in terms of snap count. But Marlon Mack is a guy in that backfield. They obviously let Frank Gore go because Mack was their guy. They wanted him earlier in the season, but he just couldn't get healthy. The guy I'm looking at, though, and I love that call, Marlon Mack, is Ito Smith. I mean, we just saw Freeman go on the IR, and Smith is probably available in 90% of leagues at this point. I mean, you look at his stats when Freeman has been out week 4 and week 6, he's seen about 45 to 46% of the snaps. He's got rushing touchdowns in both of those weeks. The thing that really stands out for me is the red zone efficiency. He's 13th in red zone rushing overall, and Coleman is 41st. And so when you look at those splits, this could really be a 50-50 committee. Again, it's still a committee. But Coleman's injury risk is also something I'm thinking about. He's been injured and has missed at least one game over the past 3 seasons. And so when you couple that all together, especially with that offense, Ito Smith is a guy that I would pick up as fast as I can because he's someone that could really change your season, especially if you're a Freeman owner.
Yes, some of us are Freeman owners and aren't very happy about today's news. But Mancuda, who you peeping on the waiver wire here for running backs? Those guys just giving us a couple big ones.
Yeah, and I think Reed really stole my homework today. I mean, I'm on Ito Smith too, and here's the reason why. The Atlanta offense is sustainable for 2 backs. We've seen it over the last couple of years with Freeman and Coleman. Now Freeman's down. Coleman, as Reed mentioned, is always hurt. So I like Ito Smith. Remember, this is a guy that in college, his last 2 seasons in college, each of them, he rushed for over 1,400 yards and 13 or more touchdowns. This guy knows how to get the ball in the end zone. He's a playmaker. They trust him, obviously, in the red zone. He scored in 3 straight weeks. They played a very explosive offense. I think he's going to get his opportunity here, and especially this week on Monday night against the Giants. Living here in New York and listening to the radio in New York, you would think that the Giants season was literally over and they weren't even taking the field coming this week. I mean, the locker room's a mess. The ownership's already calling out their best players. The season's over for the Giants, and it's a mess. So to me, especially this week, I released a video earlier today saying that Ito Smith would be my number 1 waiver priority this week, and if you owned it as like I would certainly use it on him because I think the opportunity is there for him to take charge and really be the lead back in Atlanta because both their running backs now over the last couple of years have been banged up. And if you're in a keeper league like I am, Ito Smith's the guy I want. So I'm completely in agreement with Reed, but I also like the Marlon Mack call because of the way that he was able to be, as Rita mentioned, very efficient against the Jets. And they wanted him to be the starting running back there too. So 2 potential starting running backs this week on the waiver wire that owners can pick up.
All right, guys, let's talk tight ends real quick. We will need to make it quick, though, because we are running tight on time. Jimmy Graham is on bye this week. Jared Cook's on bye this week. Reed, tell the people at home when they need to stream if they need the tight end help.
Yeah, I like O.J. Howard. You see Winston, that offense, again, much like we talked about, Atlanta can support a lot of skill players, can support 2 tight ends. We saw both Brait and Howard get touchdowns. If someone dropped them, go pick them up.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Austin Hooper, 2 straight games, double-digit targets, 9 catches, 70-plus yards, and then Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu both banged up last week.
All right, that's excellent. Adam, can you do better?
Yeah, and Njoku, 30 targets in the last 3 weeks, 13 catches over the last 2, touchdown last week, and now you know the cupcake schedule that the Browns have the next 4 weeks with Baker, as we mentioned before. So Njoku's the guy for me, considering they have no weapons outside of Jarvis Landry on the offense from the receiver and tight end position.
All right, my dudes, well played. We will play some NFL spin move with you momentarily right after we chase or fade on the NBA's opening night, which is right after this.
Tyler Sullivan here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The Rams look like they'll be without one of their main pass-catching options as they travel up the Cali coast to take on the 49ers in Week 7. Head coach Sean McVay relayed on Monday that wideout Cooper Kupp will most likely miss this contest with San Francisco after reportedly suffering a sprained MCL. Kupp has been a stud for LA over the first 6 weeks of the season as he's posted 30 catches for 438 yards and 5 touchdowns, which averages out to 18.22 DK points per game. That average puts him just inside the top 20 of fantasy wideouts this season. With him likely the equation, that will likely see Robert Woods being the main factor of the Rams offense. During the last week's contest with the Broncos, Woods was able to haul in 7 of his 10 targets on the day for 109 yards. Along with the added opportunity for targets, Woods, who prices in at $7K this week, also has a very favorable matchup. San Francisco is coming off a crushing Monday night loss to Green Bay, where there were 3 different pass catchers who went over 100 yards receiving on the night.
All right, this is it. Don't get scared now. Real NBA basketball returns tonight, and we are ringing in the new season with DK Live's Julian Edlow, Karin Phillips of the New York Daily News. Hello, you two. I don't know where you are, Julian, but it looks dark and scary and miserable.
Very dark in here. Sorry about that.
It's okay, man. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to our producers. And we're going to chase or fade some bold predictions right meow. Anthony Davis, who we can confirm will not be getting traded for Beyonce anytime soon, will average 50.
He should.
All right, well, let's hear your argument. Will he average 55 DK fantasy points this season? Go ahead, Karn, because if he does, who knows? Beyonce could have some trade value here.
I mean, I think he will when you look at the New Orleans Pelicans roster and how good they were coming off that playoff series last year, sweeping the Blazers. With Boogie gone, all the focus is on Davis. They will miss Rondo. And I like Mirotić out there as a floor spreader. So it's going to be the Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday show. But I would trade anybody for Beyonce, to be honest. But I just have a feeling that while New Orleans may not trade Anthony Davis in the future, I just have this inkling in my gut that he's going to wind up leaving. So the best business decision would be to trade him before he leaves for nothing.
Julian, what do you think here? 75 games played in consecutive seasons. The dude has a real shot, really, to lead the league in both scoring and blocks again. Another historical statistical season. Seems like it's on the horizon.
Yeah, I mean, the whole narrative with Anthony Davis being so beat up and run down these last few years really is no more. He's played 75 games in consecutive seasons. And this is a guy that I think is going to win MVP this year. I think he's going to take that next step. So if we're going that route, then yeah, Anthony Davis better be averaging 55 or more DraftKings points. I think he'll be right in that 60 range and is going to be a guy that if he can stay healthy can really be one of those anchors in lineups this year. With Boogie Cousins gone now and Rondo, who was getting a lot of usage now in LA, it's all set up for Anthony Davis to really have to do it all for the Pelicans this year.
All right, well, let's shift gears to one of Rondo's new teammates here, King James. He averaged 55 fantasy points per game last season, dude. So now he's part of the Lake Show, has all his new teammates, as you just mentioned here, Julian. So chase or fade that LeBron James will average less than 55 this year.
Yeah, I'm going to fade this and go under. Look, I was a huge LeBron guy last year. He played in 82 games. He played the most minutes he had played in years. But I just don't think it's setting up quite the same for him this year. Now, if you look at the odds makers, Vegas has LeBron James as the favorite to win the MVP. I happen to disagree there because he has better teammates. Last year he didn't have Kyrie Irving, and he was forced to do a lot more of that ball handling. This year, Rajon Rondo is going to be getting a lot of that usage. Lonzo Ball could be getting some of that usage. I don't think the Lakers are necessarily going to be a top 4 or 5 team in the West, but I don't think LeBron's going to have to give the same output that he gave last year for the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I think his fantasy numbers are going to go down a little bit.
What do you think here, Karn? Some would argue that his teammates aren't as good as they were in Cleveland. Does chasing or fading here that he's going to average less than 55 fantasy points?
I think it's going to be more. The way we've seen LeBron play in the past is going to be totally different. He's not going to have the ball in his hand as much. That's going to be Rondo's and Lonzo's job. But in terms of scoring and team defense, I think he's going to be back to being a great defender like he used to be. The last couple of years, he's had to spend so much energy, scoring and distributing like he just didn't have any gas left to play D. I think he's going to have great defensive numbers this year. But besides Brandon Ingram on that squad, who else is going to get buckets? So he's still going to get buckets. I think his efficiency will raise higher. We won't see him running the offense and telling guys where to go anymore like he used to do in Cleveland and Miami. But if you remember that year in Miami, I think it's the second year of the back-to-back, where he had this crazy run where he was shooting 60% or higher from the field, and he was only taking 12 shots a game, still averaging around 25, 26, 27. I think we're going to be closer to that LeBron where he does more, but he doesn't spend as much time on the floor because they're going to need him to do a lot, but just in a different role.
Yeah, Julian, real quick, what kind of adjustment period do you expect that LeBron is going to need early on? Do you think he's going to be trying to get everyone else involved here and maybe his fantasy value won't be as high at the start?
Yeah, I do think that'll be the case. And I don't completely understand what you're saying, Karn, because he's going to be playing more defense and not have the ball as much and play fewer minutes, but average more DraftKings points per game. That's literally impossible. He needs the ball in his hands to be able to do these things. He needs that usage that Rondo and these other guys are going to be getting. Otherwise, how do you get them? You don't get DraftKings points for stopping someone on defense unless you get a block or a steal. and those numbers go up big time.
Listen, his points are going to go up or stay around the same. He's not going to need as many shots as he did before. His assist numbers are going to go up or be the same. It's just that he doesn't have to run point guard or play. He's going to get a lot of assists on the high elbow or in the post area of guys cutting. Like, his numbers are going to be the same or higher. It's just the way that he's going to get those assists, and his numbers is going to be drastically different from what we saw in Miami and Cleveland.
All right, you both are getting the sweatometer moving. Julian, you do not seem happy with Karin's reply there, but we must move on.
I'm not.
Okay, would you like to answer back? Would you like to rebuttal once again, Julian?
No, it's fine. We got a show to run.
All right, thank you very much. You make a great producer. Another big name and a new big shiny home, well, depending on how you look at Toronto, that's Kawhi Leonard, also on the move this offseason, being traded to the Raptors. So, Julian, do you agree or disagree that he will average more fantasy points than DeMar DeRozan did last season in Toronto?
Well, he better, because he's a more efficient player. DeMar DeRozan came a long way the last few years at becoming more efficient, which was something that he was not earlier in his career. But this is the Raptors pushing all their chips to the middle of the table and saying either this guy is going to get us out of the East or it's not going to happen. So I would expect them to feature him heavily within the offense. Yes, Kyle Lowry is going to be a guy that's handling the ball a lot, but they are going to need to rely on Kawhi Leonard. And he's not necessarily going to have the same guys that he had around him in San Antonio. He had some bigger scorers there. LaMarcus Aldridge was more of a clog the guy in the post kind of guy. And he brings that rebounding, that defense. He's going to get more steals and blocks than DeMar DeRozan. So I would expect more fantasy output from him.
Karin, DeMar DeRozan ran the show in Toronto last season. He's no longer there. Does Kawhi Leonard average more fantasy points than he does up in the 6?
Nope. I've been someone that's been really, really weary of this Kawhi Leonard to Toronto news ever since it broke, because I just remember what Kawhi Leonard was at his best in San Antonio, and I've paid attention to what he always had around him. He played for the best organization in sports. He played for one of the best coaches of all time, and he played with Hall of Famers. He had Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Tim Duncan, and then he got LaMarcus Aldridge, and he had Pau Gasol throw them in there too. He had a very significant role. Play defense, shut guys down, and be the young guy that's really good on this team full of very smart, old, and crafty veterans. He's never had to create an offense. He's never had to create shots. He's never had to make people better, and he's never had to be a vocal leader. He has to be all of that in Toronto. We've never seen him do that, and we also know the guy doesn't talk. So as good as Kawhi Leonard is, we don't know how good Kawhi Leonard is outside of the state of Texas.
Karin, hot take, Phillips. That's how you get the sweatometer moving, kid. We appreciate that. Thanks, guys. We got more NBA talk with you two coming up. A look ahead to tonight's couple games here. First night in the NBA. But right now, Pat Mayo is going to give you a PGA update.
If we go to the very top of the pricing this week, we see defending champion Justin Thomas appear in at the very highest of prices. He comes in at $11,600. Brooks is over 11. Then you got Jason Day, Hideki, and Mark Leishman. Those are your 5 guys above $10,000. We talked about this last week for the Kuala Lumpur that, is there any way that you can fade Justin Thomas? And I did fade Justin Thomas, and I actually had a pretty good week. You didn't necessarily need to have him in your lineup. Do you think that you need him this week, or is the move to fade Justin Thomas and just play Brooks?
I have to play Justin Thomas. I mean, the guy is such a good golfer. I think when it comes to all these golfers up top, he's the best in this range by far. I mean, talent-wise even. And the thing about it is, if you look at it, the last couple of years that he's the second tournament he's played in each season he's won. This is his second tournament. His iron game strong, makes a ton of birdies. He's good around the greens. Probably he's number one. He comes up number one in my model. It's not even really that close. So definitely I will be playing Justin Thomas. Now, the thing is, 40% JT last week, if you faded him, it worked out. And even though he did top 5 and still scored like 120 DraftKings points. But I think he's the best chance to win this week.
So of the other guys, like if you wanted with the no-cut event, you can jam guys in, go like double stars and then a bunch of scrubs down at the bottom. Although the scrubs down at the bottom this week, bit trickier than last week because you're dealing with a lot of unknown Asian Tour players, a lot of Korean Tour players that get into this event. I mean, most of those are all of them really for me are just cross-offs. Even looking at the history, the 1-year history of this event, it's all the guys that you would expect to kind of rise up, and all the guys that you've never heard of end up finishing near the bottom because you have a huge discrepancy between the talents on these tours. So after Justin Thomas inside those top 5 guys, where would you go to next? Because I think for me, I'm going to go with Jason Day. He seems like the perfect fit for this course.
Yeah, Day is going to be – I like Hideki in cash at $10,400 on DraftKings. But Day is probably my next favorite GPP play because it does make sense. Again, another guy, incredible putter, lots of birdies, great around the greens, one of the best around the greens, avoids his 3-putts a lot. One guy I think I will fade, though, is going to be Mark Leishman. Just looking at his records past after a win, after top 3 in his career, he's had 15 top 3s in his career now. If you include last week, his average finishing position in the event he plays next is 39th. For some reason, he just doesn't do that well after a victory. I mean, if the sample size was smaller, I wouldn't look into it that much. But that's 14 different instances with only one top 10 after a top 3 finish. So probably avoid Leishman. I like Decky in cash, and I do like the Jason Day call on GPPs as well.
All right, welcome back to The Sweat, where we are once again setting out to help you not make stupid decisions when it comes to fantasy football. And that's why we have Reed, Adam, and Ryan with us again, and we're playing some NFL spin move here, putting a fantasy spin on today's biggest NFL storylines, guys. Don't look now or do. It's totally up to you, but C.J. Beathard, as we talked about in the first segment, looked good last night against the Packers, did not turn the ball over 5 times like he did the previous week. And Marquise Goodwin, who Reed was super high on, catching both of his quarterbacks' touchdowns. So how much are you considering stacking these two moving forward? Adam, home against the Rams this Sunday.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this combo in terms of stacking them. I know that their price in terms of DFS will probably be lower than a lot of the other more popular stacks. But to me, Marquise Goodwin, as Reed mentioned earlier, is battling those soft tissue injuries like his hamstring. And I just think he's too much of an injury risk. And I also just don't trust CJ Beathard. I think last night he was a great opportunity for him going up against that Green Bay defense that hasn't looked great all year. Remember what Kirk Cousins did to them and what Alex Smith even did to them a few weeks ago. So to me, I'm not just not high on CJ Beathard. I think there are better options out there. The guy, I know Kyle Shanahan loves him out there in San Francisco, and that's why he's the backup. But to me, the running game right now is just not strong. I know that they had their third-string guy in there last night for a bunch of carries. Breed a bit banged up. So to me, there are safer options out there, and I wouldn't go ahead and stack them, in DFS or in regular leagues for sure.
Reed, we know you like Goodwin. You recommended people to scoop him up off the waiver wire. Do you trust C.J. Beathard enough, though, to stack these two?
Yeah, I mean, if I trust the receiver, I think he's tethered to the quarterback. Now, C.J. Beathard, you're not spending first priority on C.J. Beathard. You're not spending a ton of fab bucks on him. No, you're not going to go out and get him. But in GPPs especially, I do like this stack. Because what do you need in GPPs? You need these guys, these wide receiver 3s potentially as a floor, like Ryan was saying, these lower floor guys, but these really high ceiling guys. And what we saw with Goodwin in his first game back, he got you 2 touchdowns. I mean, that is absurd efficiency. It's not going to stay that way. But against the Rams, like you were mentioning, I think what we've seen now is Tyler Lockett and Emmanuel Sanders, both different types of receivers, an outside receiver and a slot receiver, do well or be effective against the Rams. They're really missing Aqib Talib. Marcus Peters is a guy that used to be a shutdown corner. Yes, he's still good, but that Rams defense now has given up a bunch of points, and they've given up effective games to receivers. So I wouldn't necessarily go away from this stack in the next week coming, or potentially moving forward, because like Adam was saying, no one's going to go to C.J. Beathard, so he's going to be low owned.
Ryan, I would say I could tell by the look on your face you're not stacking these two, but that is always the look on your face. So would you consider stacking these two?
I'll split the difference between Adam and Reed on this one. I think this is super matchup dependent. Last week against the Packers, we had an idea that the Packers were not going to have a huge commitment to the run. The only thing we didn't know is whether or not the Niners offense was going to put up a fight. It turns out that they did. And since they did, it turned into a passing shootout, which favored this kind of thing to happen with Beathard and Goodwin. The problem, as far as I see it, is I am not as high on the Rams matchup this coming week as Reed is, and then looming after that is the Cardinals matchup. So in redraft leagues, I don't like either of those upcoming, but then you get the Raiders down the line, you get the Chiefs down the line. There are opportunities to potentially plug this and get the upside Reed was mentioning, but it's just not the next 2 weeks for me.
Alrighty, well, a potential change of plans for the Steelers. Le'Veon Bell was reportedly going to show up this week during Pittsburgh's bye, but according to ESPN, he's not expected to be there. So what should owners of Bell and James Conner do, Ryan?
Nothing. Nothing.
Just sit there and roll.
If you've been sitting on Le'Veon Bell for the last 6 weeks, you have never been closer to fulfilling that upside ever. And you're not going to get anything back as recompense for the 6 weeks you lost or for what he would deliver if he did have a starting role. So I don't think that makes any sense for you if you're still holding on to him. And then if you're a Conner owner with rumors swirling around about Bell the whole season, including right now, I don't think you're going to get fair market value on either side. So if you're either of those parties, I say just ride with the guy you've been committed to for 6 weeks and call it a day.
What would you do here, Mr. Mancuda? Would you just keep riding these guys? Would you consider looking for a trade partner in your season-long leagues?
Yeah, I think, it all depends on how you are as a team right now. If you're in a good position where you have depth at running back and you've prepared and kind of your team's evolved over the first 6 weeks of the season where you obviously haven't needed Bell, see where you can upgrade, see where an owner might take a chance on him and see what you can get. If you don't feel comfortable about it, shoot one of us a note and we'll certainly advise you against it or making a trade, right? So to me, that's what I would do there. And in terms of Conner, I completely agree. You got to ride him out. The guy's been really sensational considering all the pressure he's under to basically play like Le'Veon Bell. And he's been very solid. He carried them this past weekend against the Bengals. So for me, especially in leagues where year-long or even keeper leagues, I'm certainly holding on to Conner because I don't think Bell's going to rejoin that team. He's a cancer in the locker room from what everyone hears. So to me, he's on the way out. I'd be very high and keep Conner and see what I could get for Bell.
I mean, really, we got to look at our crystal ball here, and I don't think anybody knows what the hell Bell's going to end up doing, when he's going to show up, what he's going to do when he actually shows up. So all that considered, Reed, what do you do if you own Bell? What do you do if you own Conner? I mean, you're pretty lucky if you own both of them.
Right, exactly. I mean, if you picked up Conner, most likely it was in the last pick or last draft, last round of the draft in season long. Or if you have Bell, like Ryan was saying, you're sitting on him, you don't do anything. So what you want to do is you want to field offers if you have Bell or Conner. Field offers. But if you're going to field offers, get solid return for it. RB1, RB2 borderline, receiver 1 or 2 borderline, because if one of these guys sit out, like these guys are mentioning, like Adam mentioned, like Ryan was saying, if Bell sits out for instance, you have a top 12 running back, RB1 for the rest of the season. Likewise, if Bell comes back, there's no foreseeable future where Bell doesn't play. So if both of these guys are in, it's going to obviously, eat into each one's production. So if you want to trade, if you can't sit on this, and if you're 0-6 or if you're 1-5, whatever your record is in season long, look to see if you can get fair market value. If you're getting a wide receiver 2 or 3 or some scrubs, don't do it. Sit on these guys and wait and see what happens.
Alrighty, well, the Falcons have placed running back Devontae Freeman on IR with a groin injury. We mentioned this as well at the top of the show. Could return later in the season, but it's a long shot. It'll possibly be too late in your season-long league. So, Reed, what does this mean here for Ito Smith and Tevin Coleman?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, I think it's a fair split. You're going to see a pretty close 50-50 running back by committee, moving forward. I think with this offense, like Adam was mentioning, it's a high-powered offense. There's a lot of plays that they run some of the fastest games in terms of the plays that they run each game, and their defense is not good. And so when you mix it all together, you're looking at 2 running backs, and we've seen it before with Tevin Coleman and Freeman. Look, Ito Smith isn't at the level necessarily in terms of Coleman's what we've seen in the past, but all signs point to Ito Smith being someone that the Falcons trust. I think you can easily play him in the flex if you want to this week. But even moving forward, I would trust both running backs. And again, Coleman's production has been going down. His snaps have been more equal to Ito Smith. So if you need someone, go pick him up. If not, rest on Coleman. Don't worry just yet. See how he is rest of the season. And if you want to trade him, I think you can right now because of the news.
Yeah, Smith's just been hawking touchdowns from Coleman really the past few weeks. A lot of Tevin Coleman owners who aren't very happy. So, Ryan, what do you do in this situation now that Devontae Freeman is going to be out a majority of the season?
So I'm one of those Tevin Coleman season-long owners, and when I got this news, I was like, okay, cool. Thanks, bro. Without Devontae Freeman this season, it's been whatever. And I think it's because, in part anyway, the Falcons O-line ranks 30th in the NFL in adjusted line yards. And then they rank 23rd in the NFL in rushing plays per game. So not only are they not running the ball that often by comparison to their peers, they're also ineffective at doing so ever since Sarkisian took over for Kyle Shanahan. So even without Devontae Freeman, I think Coleman's outlook for the rest of the season is flexy.
Yeah.
If I can coin a term. And then I'm with Reed and Adam earlier in this segment on Ito Smith. He's a better overall option given his opportunity and his red zone opportunity more specifically.
And it's frustrating, too, because we saw when Freeman missed time last year, Coleman was like an absolute monster and was racking up like 20-plus points a game. But this year, in the opportunities that he's been given, he's not making much of this opportunity because of Smith just stealing touchdowns from this guy. So, Adam, where do you sit on this situation?
First, I can't follow the term like flexy. I mean, that's just fantastic. I love it. I'm going to congratulate you, a big double clap for you. But, yeah, I think I love Ito Smith. I mean, if you are not familiar with how he was in college, just you go to YouTube and get some highlights of him at Southern Miss. The guy really did it all. He was able to catch the ball out of the backfield, play well in the red zone. He was the key guy on a Southern Miss team where you really would not know anyone else really from that team. So, for me, I like his upside a lot. I also think Tevin Coleman, to Reed's point, has really struggled here. He's had a big opportunity in all the games that Freeman has already missed this season to really establish himself. And, for me, Coleman saved a couple of his games with receiving touchdowns. Is that really sustainable week in and week out? I just don't think it is. And look back even to the Super Bowl game against the Pats where, Coleman and Freeman got into the act and it made big plays there. So for me, I love Ito Smith moving forward. I would certainly use my number one waiver priority on him. And like these guys said, I think it's sustainable for both given the offense and the opponents that they're playing. So for me, roll with Smith for sure.
All right, potato chips, you are all free to go. I'm happy to say I believe we had not one but two smiles out of Collinsworth today. That is a new record here on The Sweat. Thank you all for that you do. NHL Tears of Joy is coming your way next.
Tyler Sullivan here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. According to reports, Bills' first-round pick Josh Allen will be out for Sunday's matchup with Colts after suffering an elbow injury in Week 6. As things stand right now, ESPN is reporting that Buffalo isn't sure which quarterback they'll go with, but the feeling within the organization is that Derek Anderson has to be the guy over Nathan Peterman, or Sean McDermott is at risk of losing the locker room. No matter which way they go, you'll probably want to stay away from any Bills players in this game. What you want to do, though, is target the Colts defense in this one, as they're 3,300 for the Sunday slate, and it looks like they'll be able to eat up whoever is under center for the Bills. In the case of Anderson, he's still pretty fresh with Buffalo, as he's only signed with them just a couple of weeks ago. And if he starts, it'll likely be a dumbed-down version of their offense, which further points in the Colts' favor. If it's Peterman, well, it's Peterman. The Colts should be the beneficiary of a ton of turnovers. He threw 2 picks on Sunday against the Texans, which included a pick 6. He shows no signs of improvement heading into Sunday. Indy's defense will likely be a high-owned unit, but the results will be worth it this weekend.
Welcome back to The Sweat. Let's get right into it and say hello to our hockey experts, the Action Networks, Joe Holka and Sean Newsham. You can download the Action Network app now, available on iPhone and Android. I guarantee it. Guys, we need your help. Please pick the best options from each tier in tonight's 8-game NHL slate, aka Tears of Joy. For all you new to the program, and if you are, welcome home. A pair of Dallas Stars in Tier 1 tonight here, guys. Tyler Seguin, Jamie Benn. Which do you prefer, Joe, or do you prefer someone else in Tier 1? Surprise me.
Yeah, I like Sagan. I don't think anyone's really even close to this guy from a shot floor, 99th percentile over the past month. The matchup's also fantastic. Only Toronto has allowed more goals than New Jersey so far this year at 4.67 per game. He's exactly what you want from a floor guy in Tier 1.
Sean, he's got me sold on Sagan.
Yeah, Sagan probably is the best option in the tier. I can't really blame Joe on that one at all. For me, I'm probably going to go for Connor McDavid. You don't get options many times to play the best player in the entire league in a tier against a team that is lacking their best defenseman. Winnipeg's going to be without Dustin Byfuglien tonight, so I really think that looking at Connor McDavid to get a little differential from the Dallas Star guys is a good option.
All right, well, let's go down to Tier 2 here, which features Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby from the Penguins. So, Sean, do you want to roster either of these guys, or are you looking elsewhere?
I definitely think that both of these guys are really solid options. I think that you can look at Pittsburgh tonight and find that they're in the best spot of the night. They have the highest team total of the night, and I think everyone's going to end up playing Sidney Crosby. So I actually prefer going with Kenny Malkin here to get a little bit of a differential in ownership percentage. In cash, I think Crosby's going to be quite a bit higher, but in the GPPs, I think you can get a little bit of a differential here with Malkin, and it's a great spot for him just as well as it is Crosby.
Joe, what about you? Were you going to be avoiding the chalk here with Crosby?
I like the thought process there from Sean for sure, pivoting over Malkin.
Yeah.
I am going to go with Crosby, though. 95th percentile in Corsi over the past month. As Sean mentioned, just probably the best spot of the entire night. Pittsburgh has our third highest shot expectation as a team. It's going to be a really high-paced game. Teams give up a ton defensively. So Vancouver's also spent the second most time shorthanded of any team in the league. So I think he gets sets up really well for this power play. So Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, those are the two guys I think that you have to consider.
All right, well, Tier 3 is looking pretty delicious here, too. It's got the likes of Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel, Jack Eichel. Who has the Joe Holka stamp of approval?
None of those guys, actually. I like Marchessault quite a bit. Fourth highest shot prediction of any player in the entire slate, and you get him in Tier 3. It's a fantastic matchup for Vegas. We like attacking them when they're at home. As a team, they have the second highest shot expectation. In Buffalo, sorry, Sean, but they've allowed the fifth most shots this year. I hate to keep picking on Buffalo every time we talk, but that's kind of how it is.
It is how it is. I'm married to a woman who is from Buffalo. I pick on them quite a bit. It is way too easy. Go ahead, Sean. Who do you like in Tier 3, bud?
Yeah, it's okay. Buffalo's 3-2 on the season, so they're above 500 for a change. For me, I'm going to take the reigning MVP, Taylor Hall. He's a guy that over the last few years, we know his shot volume is higher than what it is even thus far this season. So for me, I think I would like to go with Taylor Hall here. It's a very solid matchup against the Dallas team that gives up quite a few shots. So for me, I'm looking to go Taylor Hall. I want to get some piece of that New Jersey lineup, and I think Hall is the best option to do so.
Sean, I enjoy the fried foods, though, when I go to Buffalo, and lots of beer. Blue Light, right? Big fan? All right. Finally, guys, help us out and pick who you like the most in the last four tiers. Sean, you're up first.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go look down in Tier 6. I like Shane Gostisbehere here. You have a guy who is a very solid option for Philadelphia. He averages just under 5 shots per game, which is very solid, and he also has 4 block shots in 2 of his games as well. So he has a guy that he's going to get you 4 or 5 shots on goal, maybe 2 or 3 block shots. So his floor of 3 or 4 DraftKings points is fantastic, as well as the main cog on their power play unit. So I think I want to look down at Tier 6 and look at Shane Gostisbehere from Philly.
Where are you going on this one, Joe?
Chris Letang in Tier 4 is pretty much a lock, in my opinion. I mean, you can make an argument that he's one of the best players on the entire slate on Classic, given his price. So in Tier 4, I think he makes a lot of sense. 95th percentile shots plus blocks. I don't think anyone else in Tier 4 is even close to that kind of floor. And again, ton of opportunities, and the power play is where Letang really thrives. And again, Vancouver has the second most penalized team in the league this year. So Letang on that first power play unit in Tier 4.
All right, before we say toodaloo to you two, hit us with your lock for tonight, your slate-approved pick, please. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm going to stay right there with Letang. I honestly think that he's the best way to get access to this power play unit, not just in tiers, in Classic as well. He's just one of those guys that in a matchup where it sets up so well for special teams, I definitely think that he's a guy that you have to have.
Who you got, Sean?
Yeah, even though Joe and I usually disagree, where I'm actually going to have to agree with him here on Chris Letang. It's the best matchup for any defenseman on the slate. They're going to end up on the power play quite frequently. His price is very good, even in Classic, as Joe said. So when you can get this guy at Tier 4, I think he's easily the lock of the slate.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We've got Steve Buchanan on the way for NLCS talk right after we hear from Pat Mayo. We got a little sportsbook update.
Coming off a dismantling of the Giants last Thursday night, the Eagles are back at home, 4.5-point favorites against the Panthers, who are coming off a pretty awful performance in Washington in Week 6. Truly abysmal. Game total, 45.5. Wouldn't expect another brutal performance from the Panthers this time around, though. Well, at least offensively. Defensively, they're a train wreck, and Carson Wentz should feast on the secondary if he can stay upright. You see, Carolina's defensive deficiencies play directly into the hands of the Eagles' offense. Carolina's a top 10 against the run, but the joke's on them. Doug Peterson would rather just throw it. Bad news for a bottom 5 pass unit. Expect the Eagles to post plenty of points, but Carolina will probably do the same. Cam doesn't usually struggle in consecutive weeks, and this offense seems specifically designed to give Philly fits. There's so much team speed on the Panthers offense that big plays just loom. We know Christian McCaffrey's fast, but guys like DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel only need an inch of space to find daylight. Hell, even old man Torrey Smith still has jets. And it's these big plays that have crippled the Eagles' D all season. Then, very sneakily, there's the special teams gap. Philly, been bad on special teams. Bottom 10 unit through 6 weeks. Carolina, third in football. Just a few shifts in field position should be enough to keep this close. I like the over of 45.5 the most, but I think the Eagles win a squeaker at home. So I'll grab the 4.5 and take Carolina in the points.
Well, well, well. Look who we have here. It's Steve Buchanan. And only Steve Buchanan. No Julian to jeer. No Matt to masticate. No Garion to galvanize. It's just you and me, buddy. You and me.
Well, I will say huge missed opportunity that you and I aren't co-hosting today. That would have been electric.
I'm telling you right now, I tried to get Reed up here because Reed has hosted before, but for some reason, our producers, the two Toms, they're just not going to have it because they apparently don't want to have fun here on this show. And they just want me to sit here and read the prompter. Slate approved. All right, man. The reason we have you here, though, is to help everyone at home make some picks for tonight's Brewers-Dodgers NLCS showdown. So, let's start with Rich Hill. He's the most expensive player on the board with a price tag of $15,200. His Brewers counterpart, Gio Gonzalez, nearly $3,000 cheaper. Which one are you rolling with here, Steve?
You know, if Matt LaMarco is here, he's going to be disgusted with my answer. Probably neither. I don't really like either of these guys here tonight. I mean, let's start off with Gio. I mean, he's going to have the shortest of short leashes here. He actually might be the opener without actually being named an opener. He's going to be out of there quick. And I think they're going to go to a bullpen game here in this series. And then we go to Rich Hill. And even though I have a personal vendetta against him, I just simply don't like rostering him. I'm not going to touch him either. I mean, if you're going to get some pitching exposure here, like it's been almost the entire series, the relievers are the way to gain the edge in these showdown slates. They have been the ones who have been scoring a lot of the points on the pitching side. Hill does have some strikeout upside, but the Brewers just don't strike out, especially against lefties. They ended the regular season with less than a 20% K percentage against lefties on the year. So I don't see a ton of upside for Hill either. So both starting hit pitchers, forget it.
Yeah, okay, so we'll get to the relievers here in just a second. Gonzalez, yeah, he opened the NLCS for Milwaukee, tossed 2 innings, gave up a solo bomb to Manny Machado, which... You going with Machado or Justin Turner against Gonzalez?
Yeah, both these guys are priced really close together. So, I mean, you really can't go wrong with either one. But I just got to go with Machado here. I mean, he's swinging the hot bat right now. He has been a force in these playoffs, averaging just over 10 DK fantasy points in those games. Look, there's nothing wrong with playing Justin Turner, but the numbers are weighted so much heavier for him when he's playing lefties over righties. Once they get into that bullpen, the matchup doesn't favor Turner as much, where Machado is just more of a well-rounded hitter. He can hit both right and lefties with power. Turner does have some power, but again, not as much against righties here. So if I had to choose here, it would definitely be Machado. But in these showdown slates, you honestly could get both of them in your lineup, so I don't mind either one.
And especially if you're choosing not to roster one of the starting pitchers, right? I mean, you're going to have some cash left over.
Absolutely. I mean, huge savings if you're doing that.
Okay, all right, well, let's go over to Milwaukee. Ryan Braun, Lorenzo Cain, they're in the price range. I believe only $100 difference. So who do you roster against Hill? Because let's keep in mind here, Braun, 2 hits and 12 at-bats in this series. Cain went 0 for 5, 0 points yesterday.
Yeah, both of them have been a little, haven't been hitting so well lately. But if there's one thing that Braun did well during the regular season was to hit power against lefties. Cain was fantastic against lefties, getting on base, 451 on base percentage for the year, but he just doesn't hit for a lot of power. He only had a 155 isolated power against them. Braun had 32 hits in the regular season against lefties. 18 of those went for extra bases, which was good for a 277 isolated power. You know, neither player does anything special against righties, but he should grab at least a couple of at-bats against Hill tonight. So I think Braun definitely has the more upside, has some more power. They can get you those pivotal points, what you really need in the showdown. If there's a guy that hits a home run, he's not on your roster, you got a lot of making up to do.
All right, well, let's say a lot of people out there throw these big salaries as they're building this roster. Let's give the people at home a cheap option or two they can reach for tonight.
Yeah, Yasmani Grandal, I mean, he might be having the worst defensive series ever. I mean, he's putting Gary Sanchez to shame with how bad he's been behind the plate, but he's still a good option when he's batting. His numbers against lefties aren't favorable, but he might really only see Gio Gonzalez once tonight, because against righties, he's much better. 361 WOBA, 240 isolated power with 20 of his 24 home runs during the regular season. Also seeing some good power numbers at Dodger Stadium against righties. That's actually where the majority of his power has been this season. So thankfully for us, defensive mishaps don't really bother us here. You know, that doesn't take away points. Grandal can still get it done at the plate.
All right, you said earlier you're not taking either one of the starting pitchers, so which relievers are the best options for tonight? You said that's the way to go.
Yeah, so Brandon Woodruff, if he's not hitting home runs, he's very likely going to be coming into this game in relief of Gonzalez. $9,300 is expensive for someone who might come into this game, but it looks like he's going to. He hasn't pitched since Friday, since he's moved to the bullpen in the beginning of September. 254 WOBA with 11.4 K9. Granted, it was only about 13 innings, but those are definitely some good numbers there. Then, of course, Josh Hader. I mean, you cannot deny the strikeout potential with Hader. When he was in the game and he pitched 3 innings in game 1, he ended up with 25 DK fantasy points as a reliever, and that was through just 3 innings of work. He's pitched 3 2/3 innings so far in this series, 6 strikeouts. I mean, his K upside is just immensely high. You can't go wrong with either guy. But like I said, Woodruff obviously is the one that you want to worry about because of how high his salary is. But he legitimately could go 3 to 4 innings tonight.
Hey, bonus round. You want to give me a home run watch? A home run watch? Maybe a guy who's locked to go tonight. Go yard.
Grandal, bring it back, baby. Save your series. I think Grandal parks one tonight.
All right, beautiful. Roster's locked in 2 hours and 8 minutes and counting. People, get on it. Good having you here, Steven. Thanks for everything, including the follow on Instagram today. Means the world
hey,
to
man,
me,
you
bud.
know, me and you follow each other. Me and Kaufman, that's just not his thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, he is a super weird guy, but we love him here at DraftKings. Who to play in tonight's 2-game NBA slate? Basketball is back, and we are too, right after this.
Tara Lanazak in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Amari Cooper, trade rumor alert. The Raiders are seeking first-round pick for the wide receiver who has been inconsistent throughout his tenure in Oakland. According to NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, the Raiders have had some conversations about potentially trading him. The Raiders season is spiraling, and to top it off, Amari suffered a concussion last game in the team's blowout loss against the Seahawks. Coach John Gruden is not wanting to publicly discuss the possibility of the trade, saying he's going to be a big part of our offense and we'll see what happens here. Cooper has 22 catches for 280 yards and 1 TD on the season. Gruden has already made waves by trading Khalil Mack and has also been reportedly shopping around another first-round pick, safety Carl Joseph. Now it's looking like a complex rebuild year under Gruden in his first season with the Raiders. So, will the Raiders get what they want for Amari, who has failed to live up to expectations since being taken 4th overall in the 2015 draft by Oakland? Time will tell.
All right, back for more. It's DK Live. Julian Edlow and New York Daily News' Karin Phillips getting us ready for opening night in the NBA. I know you are both extremely excited for this. I can see it on your faces. We're playing some NBA pick and roll right now. We give you 2 options for players tonight on tonight's slate. You're going to tell us who's the better choice. So Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid are the highest priced players on this 2-game slate. Julian, if you can only have one, only one, who's it going to be? Going to need that microphone on, buddy. We can't hear you. Go ahead. Want to try again? Let's go to Karin. Go ahead, Karin. You're a professional. Your mic works. They're both down right now, so I'm going to look into the camera, and I'm going to tell you that we'll hopefully have...
Is this good for me right now?
Oh, we got it. I don't have to fill anymore. Go ahead.
All right. I unmuted myself right there. That was extremely professional. I was not planning on that happening.
It's because you're drunk.
What are we doing? Kevin Durant and Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
Joel
Pick
Embiid.
one, please.
I will go with him because I think when you're rostering the Warriors, I think this is the tightest one that we're going to go through. But when you're rostering the Warriors, you have so many stars that can do the damage. When you're talking about Joel Embiid, yes, Ben Simmons is there, but he had a horrible series against Boston last year. Not necessarily a shooter. You know that Embiid is going to get it. Whereas with the Warriors, it could be Steph Curry's night, it could be Klay Thompson's night. So I'm not saying I don't love the play of Kevin Durant. I would like to fit both of them in my lineup, but if I have to pick one, it will be Joel Embiid.
Yes, we're making you only pick one here, Karn. So who do you like, Kevin Durant, Joel Embiid? Take it away.
Kevin Durant, like you said about that last year, that Philly-Boston series, Ben Simmons was terrible, but you know who also choked in those last minutes of those last games?
Who?
Joel Embiid.
Oh.
History tells us that teams suck on ring ceremony night. I don't know what it is. They just don't play well. But history always tells us that Kevin Durant shows up when he plays against OKC. And even though Russ won't be playing tonight, just by sheer pettiness, I think Kevin Durant's going to go off tonight. So I'm taking KD.
All right, Karn, the Celtics. Do you have something, Julian? Were you going to say something?
I did have something. Can I give it?
Yes,
So
please.
Joel Embiid, although he choked down the stretch of that series last year, wasn't able to get buckets, he scored 50 DraftKings points in 4 of those 5 games of that series. So he was priced up around $9,400 in that series. So at $8,800, if you're getting above 50 on him, you're going well past 5 times value. So
He would have had more points if he didn't choke down the stretch, though.
He would have, but with a 13-point spread in that other one, this could be a blowout with no Westbrook. That spread might even be moving with Westbrook out. Durant might not even play the fourth quarter of that game.
All right, well, we'll have much more on the Westbrook situation here momentarily. Great tease, guys. Karn, the Celtics have both Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward coming back from injury. Which one do you like better tonight? I have a feeling it's going to be Irving with Hayward on a minutes restriction here.
Definitely going to be Irving, just for the simple fact that we've seen Kyrie Irving come back from injury, starting from that 1 year at Duke in his career, like 80 million times. There's always a reason why he can't play 82 games, some little knick-knack, if it's serious or not, and that guy always comes back and plays well. Gordon Hayward, on the other hand, this is his first major injury. He's got a minutes restriction, and that guy basically took a year off of basketball, and he's trying to kind of get his rhythm back and really trust that ankle. So I'm going with Irving to lead this team for, at the beginning of before they can work Hayward all the way in, and that's why he's my MVP pick for the season.
All right, Julian, how long until Hayward is, worked in and finds his groove here, man?
I think it's going to take a while, and I think with the way that Jason Tatum has emerged last season, and many people, including myself, think will continue to emerge this season, I think that Gordon Hayward's never going to see the role that we thought heading into last season he would have with the Celtics. Jason Tatum's going to be a better player pretty soon than Gordon Hayward, I think. But Kyrie is the easy answer tonight on this one. You can't play Hayward. He's probably one of the easiest fades on the slate given that minutes restriction. And then if you watched any of them in preseason, you saw how rusty he looked on that leg. So Hayward has a lot to get back, whereas Irving, he was money in limited minutes in the preseason. He's looked spectacular so far. He seems to be all the way back from that knee injury and ready to go. And he's only $7,600. I was very surprised at how low Irving was priced on the slate.
All right,
we finally agreed.
We do.
It only took us about an hour here.
One.
Hey, we have 2.5 minutes left. I want to get through both these questions, so make them quick, guys, because it's about tonight's game. Russell Westbrook out, recovering from minor knee surgery. Paul George going to be the biggest star on the court here, but Dennis Schroeder is going to fill in at point guard. Julian, which one do you like to be a better ROI tonight?
Yeah, Schroeder's only $6,300. I think it is compared to $8,000 for Paul George. So that's the better value play. But honestly, this is a 2-game slate. You have to play both of these guys with no Russell Westbrook.
You gonna be playing both of them, Karn?
No, I'm just going with PG-13 in this one. He's going to do a lot. He's going to rebound. He's going to pass. He's going to score. He's going to defend. And Dennis Schroeder is only known for one thing, and that's getting buckets. And this is a stage he's never been on.
We'll take that.
Steph Curry, Ben Simmons, highest priced point guards tonight. Which one do you want on your team, Karn?
Oh, I'm going with Steph on this. Simmons just has some ghosts playing against Boston, so I'm staying away from him.
Yeah, you leaning in the same direction here, Julian?
Yeah, another easy one. I don't like Ben Simmons against the Celtics. Steph Curry in a much higher projected scoring game against OKC. Dennis Schroeder, one of the worst point guard defenders in the league. That's who's going to be on Curry, so give me Curry there.
Okay, so Curry for like a bajillion points tonight. I like it. Slate approved time, boys. We got a little more than a minute. You got some time. Julian, who's your lock for the night?
Honestly, I feel very strongly about both of those OKC guys, and you can make it either of them. It's Paul George and Dennis Schroeder. Westbrook just takes up so much usage. He has the ball in his hand all the time. He takes so many shots. A lot of that is going to go to Paul George with the shooting, but Schroeder's going to have the ball in his hand so much more. You just can't go wrong with both of these guys in such a fast-paced projected game. 222 projected points against the Warriors. These guys are going to be playing from behind. They're going to be running. They're going to be shooting. Both are going to have really big nights.
Colin, your lock of the night, slate-approved pick. Go ahead.
Kyrie, Uncle Drew Irving. The reason this guy's my favorite player in the league is because when big-time games and everyone's watching, that guy shows up and has big moments.
All right. Hey, who's going to be in the NBA Finals, Karin? Real quick.
If healthy, I've got Boston over the Warriors. If not healthy, the Warriors beat Boston.
Julian, you're shocked. Give it to us real quick.
I wish I could be on the same page with that, but healthy or not, the Celtics are going down to the Warriors in 5 games.
All right, so you guys at least both agree on the two teams. So congratulations again for agreeing. All right, that's it. That's the sweat. We're going to be back tomorrow, 6 o'clock. Hopefully Jessie is here. I might not be because I feel like I'm starting to get sick now. Later.